Welcome to the Speaking of Jazz podcast series with Manny Kellough in association with Music Tribes Unite News. Now let's get started.
Well, today I'm very honored and happy to have a fantastic lady. She's a pianist, she's an organist, she's a fabulous jazz vocalist, and also a recording artist. Please say hello and welcome my jazz vocalist, Miss Kathryn Farmer. How you doing, Kathryn? Let's talk.
Oh, I'm okay, and thank you so much for having me on your show, Manny. Wow, it's fantastic.
Well, as we start, I'd like to know a little bit about Kathryn. And what I'd like to know is where you were from. And,
all right.
What were some of the influences that got you to where you are today? We're just going to take our time and talk, okay?
All right, Manny. Well, wow, I have a long story, a long history. I was born in New York City, but my parents felt it was better for me to be raised in Westchester County, and they brought me to Westchester, and I was about 2 years old.
Yeah.
And my dad and my mom and my uncle, they had a soul food bar and restaurant, which started as just a restaurant with my grandparents, but my dad decided, he was the one that did that single-handedly. He said, we're gonna make a bar and put some jazz in here and a jukebox and a piano. So he did that. That was his idea. It was his baby, actually, the idea to have the bar and the whiskey and the liquor and the soul food. And there was always pig's feet in a vinegar jar and back in the bar for the customers to enjoy. If they wanted a little something to nibble on and not a full meal, they would have some pig's feet from the vinegar jar.
I remember that
day. Yeah. So I guess I'm aging myself by saying that. And he had live music at the bar. And one of his favorite basses was a bassist with Harry Belafonte. So I started hearing live jazz that young.
Now, how old were you then?
Ooh, when he started taking me to the bar since I was 2, but I guess I really was able to stay around there, and he taught me how to cook and have me serve the customers a little bit because he thought it was cute. So I guess I was about 6 years old. 5-6 years old.
Okay.
And I would serve the customers the soul food plates, the early hours, of course. And I was just mesmerized by the music and the live music that was only on the weekends. We only had that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I was mesmerized. I started playing by ear right there at that bar. That's how I started. That was my beginnings, was to imitate Ray Charles. My first song was Hit the Road Jack. And it was pretty easy. I mean, for me, it was pretty easy, and to mimic. And a teacher at my elementary school, this was first grader, so told my dad, your daughter really has talent. You should get her a piano. And I didn't know she said that, but I came home, and one day, first or second grade, there was a piano in my bedroom.
Okay.
And he got me lessons, and I found the lessons were difficult for me in the sense that I did everything by ear. So I cheated. So I had this lady every day. She would come in and help me with my lessons and teach me new songs. But I always said, can you play the song first for me? And she didn't know. So 2 years went by. And I was played every lesson. I made sure when she left, I went over what she played. And then after 2 years, she said, here, do this one. I said, you play it first. Show me how it goes. She said, no, you played it. You've been this far. And then I go, I need you to play it for me. She said, did you mean that you did all of this for 2 years and you didn't learn how to read music? And that was beginning of me. I kept taking the lessons, but she made it really hard for me. I did have to learn to read music. That was a must. My dad got after me, but I kind of didn't want to do the classical thing, and I just got away from it. And I got back into it later in my late teens and went to music school, New England Conservatory. Yeah. So I kind of didn't want to do it that way. It was so easy. It came easy by the ear. And by playing piano by ear came easy. And also she was teaching me the fingerings. I did get that with the piano. I did get all the correct fingerings and stuff. But I was lazy about reading the music. And that was bad. If I could go back, I wouldn't be that lazy. But I did go back to it. And I went to music school. I was singing. But of course, I was imitating Ray Charles and some of the other people in the jukebox, which was every R&B artist and some jazz. He had a smaller section of jazz. So, and he would take me to go to the Apollo to hear, all the greats. And the deal was I had to hear the jazz with him once every 2 months, and he would take me to the R&B. That was the deal.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about you went to the conservatory. So did you take a major? Were you majoring in voice or piano?
I was minoring in voice. I was actually majoring in piano. I really, when I turned 17, 18, I really, really wanted to do the piano. More like even 18, late. I just really wanted to do piano. So I was actually a piano major in the jazz department of New England Conservatory. It was a beginning jazz department. I think it was there maybe about 5 years before I got there. It was very new because, most conservatories didn't yet embrace jazz like that.
Right.
So I was kind of...
They thought we were making noise.
There we go. They thought jazz musicians were definitely making noise, and, it wasn't accepted as a classical art form yet. But you know that. So my teachers were Jackie Byard. He was my piano teacher.
Okay.
And I wanted to go. I had applied to the conservatory and to Berklee College of Music, but Berklee had a good piano teacher. I forgot his name, but I really wanted to study with Jackie. He was my dream to study with. And when I got that opportunity, I just went for it.
Speaking of piano teachers, my mother wanted me to take piano lessons.
Oh.
She wanted me to play the violin. She wanted me to play all the little instruments, but I couldn't stand the piano. I couldn't stand the accordion. I couldn't stand none of them. Now I love the piano.
Wow.
I just tinkle around with it, But I guess drums is my instrument. I wanted to be a drummer. I said, no, I don't want to play that. I want to play drums. She said, you need to learn how to play the piano. So, being hard-headed and all that, I stuck to what I wanted to do. But now I love the piano. I love to hear a great piano player, So
isn't that something? And I was attracted to the drums in college. I didn't know I could. Isn't this wild? Because I didn't know I had the gift to play, and everybody was taking a break, and it was just a trio. And I just, a guitar, a bass, and what was it? Guitar, bass, and a piano. So I went over to the drums, the seat was empty, and I realized I could play. And they were like, wow. And you know what it is that we're jazz musicians. We hear the whole thing, and the instruments kind of, each one will pull us in, so that's how we end up with a certain instrument. So the drums, yeah, but we know the language of all the instruments. We know what it is. It's a jazz language, and we know the language. So I realized I could play, and then I started, I had a drummer teach me, and I actually owned a drum set. I bought a drum set in Boston while I was still in school. I was still a piano major, but I had a drum set in my apartment, and I used to play it. I did my paradiddles, double paradiddles,
really?
Yeah, the whole thing, yeah. And I've even done a few gigs on drums. I mean, simple gigs, nothing up-tempo like you, just kind of simple businessman's bounce stuff.
just a little lightweight swing, just to
yes.
keep the time in, huh?
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. And I minored in voice. I didn't major in voice, but I did sing at different gigs, of course, in my stay in Boston during college. And then right after college, I went to Bermuda. My first professional gig was in Bermuda. I was a singer with a piano players trio. And what we did was open up shows. And Ben Vereen was an act. I'm trying to remember the other. We always opened up his show, and there was Gandy Burgess was the trumpet player. He was equivalent to Wynton Marsalis down there in Bermuda at that time. He's deceased, but he was the big guy for jazz, and we opened up shows, and he came along and he would conduct the show that we did first, and then the big show would come out. So that was my first professional gig, and I was 21, I guess, right after college.
Fantastic. Now, while we're on that note, tell me some of the artists, some of that you worked with, your travels. I'd like to hear some of that. I know you have some stories.
Oh, do I ever? Well, since we're talking about college, I will fast forward this to a great pianist I went on the road with, is Doug Kahn. And I'll tell you why I'm fast forwarding this is because in college, I loved him and Gene Carn, their music they did on Black Jazz. Okay. I loved that music, those 3 records, Revelation, the other 2, I forgot the names of them. I do all the music. And I memorized all the music. I used to sing with the records. And I knew that. And Doug told me that he heard about me through somebody else. And we talked on the phone. And he said, you actually know all this music? He said, most other jazz singers know 1 or 2 of the songs, Yeah. And you know the whole book? I said, well, I don't know the whole, but I know most of it. And so he hired me. And we did a lot of gigs around the Northeast down through Florida. I did some with the jazz organization in Palm Coast. We did some gigs in Jacksonville, and some of the last gigs I did was at Yoshi's with him in California.
Yoshi's, I played Yoshi's.
Yeah, Yoshi's.
I played Yoshi's. Go ahead.
Isn't that a great plug? Oh.
Beautiful.
So I just fast forwarded to him because I thought about college. And the reason that I happened to know Doug's catalog was because I was in college and I just fell in love with Jean, his wife, his former wife, and him. That music just knocked my socks off. It just really did. And I was so glad. So he put me in the group, the Black Jazz Legacy Band. So that's what he called it. And eventually, right after we did the last gigs in Yoshi's, Gene came back to join him and they did a bunch of gigs together.
Really?
So maybe I was responsible for them coming back together and doing some gigs. And I mean, she's the creator of that, her and him together. So yeah. And yeah, I just thought I'd go to him. But I have others, of course, many others.
I'm sure you've been all over the world. And, well,
I worked with, they were described as world music. The band was called The Klezmatics. There's several bands coming out of New York that play klezmer music. Mm-hmm. And I honestly was not familiar with klezmer music, to be honest. But they asked me would I want to join. I did. And it was interesting music, kind of vibrant, like Middle Eastern, where would it Eastern European music. Jewish Eastern European music. It's kind of nice, modal sounding. And what they did, they were kind of catchy. So each year they had a klezmer and jazz, klezmer and gospel. And I did, even though I'm a jazz musician, I did the klezmer and gospel CD. And a year later, they made klezmer and bluegrass. That was the one that won the Grammy.
Really? Okay.
Won them a Grammy. And that's why I know about them, because I really didn't know much about klezmer music, but it taught me about it. I learned about it. I had to, because I was playing piano, I was playing organ and singing. And there was another organist, and we kind of switched a little bit. And he was a singer, I'm a singer. And that's how sometimes I did the organ, sometimes I did the piano, and I was always singing, mostly background for the klezmer people, but the artists. But yeah, that was nice. And we recorded that live in Germany, and we did concerts throughout Europe. And then, I guess I want to say, yes, Lester Bowie. I worked with the great Lester Bowie.
Very good. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
Lester Bowie he was from St. Louis, and he had different bands. He had at least 6 different bands. And the one that he asked me to join, because I played Hammond B3, as you know, was the organ. I forgot the name of it, but it was an organ band. It was built around the organ and horn players. And he had me join them. And we did some tours in Europe. And like the big festivals, the Montreux Jazz Festival, North Sea, stuff like that. That was a great time. And he also had me with him in New York City. And we did the Detroit Jazz, I think it was called the Montreux Detroit. Yeah, the Montreux Detroit. Yeah, and he had, at that time, he had what's called upcoming musicians, the latest, newest, they're going to be great musicians. And that was James Carter, who became extremely big, and Frank Lacey.
Yes.
And Frank Lacey recorded on my CD with me. I put Frank Lacey on with me. So it was really great. I got to know those guys. And James later, as he got really, really famous, and he was on the cover of Downbeat, and he took me for some gigs to travel with him, where he also used the organ. And on these gigs, I didn't really sing. I was the B3 player. Right? And I remember this story. Can I tell you this story?
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, because James just started getting famous, so he took me to North Sea, and I was a little nervous. It was a huge festival, and they needed me to help to put the pedals in the organ. That crowd was, I don't know how many thousands. I couldn't even see it. It was so far back. So I had to go out on stage and help. They're really heavy, the pedals with the hammer.
Yes, the B3 pedals.
I couldn't even pick them things up on myself. And someone helped me on the other side. I was instructing them how to put it up a little bit and put it in. Right. Audience they started giving me applause for that. then I went over to test it, and they gave me a standing ovation for just testing the instrument. I had to because he always had a male organist, and that male organist had to do some other gigs. So he had me, and I had worked with him before. So, and I said, now I'm feeling a lot better, but I was still nervous. And so I asked their promoters to get me a shot, like a little glass of rum. And the promoter came back with the big, huge, like $30 bottle of rum. And I said, what? And I said, I'm not an alcoholic. So I just took a little tiny bit out of there before we went on, and I was really feeling good. Now I'm good. So the set was fantastic. We were after Roy Hargrove and Larry Willis.
Yeah, okay.
The late Roy Hargrove.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Griffin was after us. But when we went back and the dressing room was empty, no one was there, and the bottle was empty. The bottle of rum was gone. And so James Carter and all of them said, I know who did this, Griff. So I ended up having only one shot. It was a huge bottle.
Well, at least you didn't have to devour the bottle.
No, I didn't. And Griff sounded great, so it didn't bother. If that was really him, it didn't bother him. His set was fantastic.
Well, I got another question for you. We're all right. What are you currently working on now? You doing any recording, or can you tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, because of this, our crappy pandemic, it really slowed me down because a lot of what I've been doing the last 10 years have been both hotels and cruise ships. Okay. So I was in Vietnam in 2020, February 2020, after getting off a cruise ship, and I was stuck in Vietnam for a little bit, and they got me home, and I don't know, it was just a crappy 2 years for everybody. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but and I had recorded not too long before that, but now what I'm working on is trying to, I have two guys that come over, a drummer and a bassist, and that drummer also plays piano. So what we do is we switch a little seats. Sometimes he'll come with the piano and I sing with him in the bass. And I'm trying to work out some songs that I have never recorded that I have done for a long time, or maybe I've done them and left them and I'm coming back to them and trying them out in a key higher or a key lower and see how things are. Yeah. And yeah, you know, just to try things out now that we're out of the crappy part and we can get together and we can play together again. So that's what I'm doing now. And I really hope to put something out. It may be just a 10-song or 11-song CD, but I'll do something. It'll be a little more scaled down than the one I did, Moon Dance. That had horn players and, you know, 4 horns and the whole thing. It won't be quite as expansive as that, but I will do something with the trio and myself. Yeah. And I'll also incorporate some of the ideas I did on my CD, my first own CD. I've done other people's CD, but my own CD, Moon Dance. So I did background vocals because I love background vocals. And it came out really good. The band was kind of like, background vocals. Sarah Vaughn doesn't do that. I said, don't worry, I'm going to do it. I'm not Sarah, and I'm not going to try to pretend I'm Sarah, and I love Sarah. I'm going to do background vocals. And I did it. And my musical director was John DiMartino, and I didn't do it when he was there because my band was against the background vocals. It ended up sounding fantastic, and John heard it, and the what's called the recording engineer, and they were like, "Wow, this sounds great." And so I'm going to incorporate some of that into my next CD for sure, because then John said, "You should do some take sticks, you know, stuff like that, because you can really do these harmonies and yourself. This is great."
Now, is your next CD going to have some of the bossa novas on it that you like to do?
Yes. And can I tell you how I actually got into bossa nova? You want to know how I got? Because I didn't. It was much later during when I was in Asia that I had to get into it to work. Can I tell you the story?
Sure.
I was in Vietnam. There's a place in a hotel in Vietnam. That was the one I was stuck in. I've done it 5 times for like 6-month contracts. And I was there, and the general manager of the Grand Hyatt in Tokyo happened to be visiting. He loved my show. And so my manager from my hotel in Vietnam came over to me. He said, "This gentleman's from the Tokyo. He's a general manager from the Tokyo Hyatt. He would like to speak with you on your break. Can you go sit with him?" I said, "Oh, sure. Why not?" And he said, "I would love for you to sing at our hotel, the Grand Hyatt." And I had heard about it. The Park Hyatt was all jazz in Tokyo. The Grand Hyatt was bossa nova. They split the genres apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to go in the Park Hyatt. So I asked him, "What about the Park Hyatt?" He said, "Well, I'm not in charge of the Park Hyatt, but I am in charge of the Grand Hyatt. And I'd like you to come there. I love your voice." I said, "Okay." And then the next thing he said, "Can you sing bossa nova? Because it's mostly a bossa nova repertoire." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Can I ask a question though? Can I sing the bossa novas in English?" He said, "Sure, just make sure they're bossa novas." He said, "I want you in about 9 months." So you know what I did? I went to Astrid Gilberto, because she is the one that had most everything in English for all that time she was with Stan Getz. So all these English lyrics, she had the bossa novas, all the famous ones. Because I'm like, what do I do? Do I make a regular jazz song, bossa nova all night? I had to do, because I was singing behind people, the singers, I mean, coming from Portugal, Brazil. And that I was like one of the few Americans coming in there who's really a jazz singer. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's what I had to do. So I learned tons of bossa nova. I mean, for 9 months, I sat by Astrid Roberto. She was my gal. Well, and I learned a lot because I didn't know when I went to the gig, when he had asked me, to do the gig, I probably did 5 bossa novas, 6 bossa novas.
I love bossa novas myself.
Well, I can fool people. I learned that repertoire. I sat with her singing over and over, and that she was my main teacher. There's a few more. Gail, I think it was Costa. What's her name? She does some stuff in English. What's her last name is Costa. And there was a few others that did English, but as a whole, album, CDs of English and bossa nova, that's the gal to go to. And luckily, everything was in the same key. So that's how I did it. And I was ready to do 4 sets a night of bossa nova.
Fantastic. Well, let me jump in right here and ask you this question. How were the musicians there to work with?
The musicians were fantastic. And I'll tell you this little story. I actually had a jazz band who also had to learn bossa novas. They were we call people who travel like you and myself expats. So I had a British pianist, British bassist, and a German drummer, all with Japanese wives. So they were living there. They're great musicians. They were fantastic. And and I also had an American bass player. He's still there. They're all still there. They're married. They have families. But they were formerly at the Park Hyatt with the real jazz hotel. But they were asked to go to the Grand Hyatt, and so they switched because it was a little better of a deal for them. Because instead of working 3 months, the Grand Hyatt, they got to stay there all year round. What's better than being in Tokyo with a family and you're working 365 days a year, just about, except for 1 day a week.
You can't beat it.
Can't beat it. So they all switched. And he told them when he told me, you have to do the bossa novas. And they went to take lessons with there was a guy there, he's deceased now, he was a bossa nova pianist from Brazil. He taught my band how to play bossa nova.
Really?
Yeah, so everybody had to learn to play that hotel. You had to learn bossa nova. We could veer off and do some jazz, 2 songs here, 2 songs there, but the real, the genre of that room, it was called Maduro, which means like smoky, and the whole thing of the vibe was bossa nova.
Besame mucho.
Yes, that's it. Oh, all the time. That was the vibe. I'm just glad that the manager said I could sing it in English, because I said, if he says I have to sing this in Portuguese in 9 months, I'm in trouble. I won't be able to cut it. I have to think of somebody else, or he has to get somebody else, because that was not going to happen.
I hear you. Well, I have another question. What about tours? Are you planning to do any tours or anything you have coming up?
Not yet. I hope by the summer to be, I am working on trying to get some stuff together. I won't say yet what it is, but I'll blast you out when I put it together. But right now, everything's in the making, but I really hope to get back on the road. And I was with like the Artist Shore Orchestra. We were all over the East Coast, down through Virginia, your state, yeah. And big band, I miss singing with the big band. I did so much of that before the pandemic. I really miss that.
Yeah.
Artie Shore Orchestra. There was another big band orchestra. I worked at a club up the street called Swing 46. It's all about swing dancing, and every band was a big band, either a mini big band, 10, 11 piece to 18 piece. And I was there twice a week when I wasn't touring. And I miss those days, and I hope they're coming back.
I think so. I think they're going to start to loosen up to where we can all get back out there.
It's starting, because I can see things are opening up, and it's starting to work. It's starting to work. I sang the national anthem at a big party. With most of the people were from Swing 46. So that was the first time she did a party since the pandemic. So things are picking up. I see music now going on in some of the clubs. It's still not at the level it was prior, but it's definitely picking up.
Very good. Yeah, I'm hoping and praying that it will loosen up so that we can get back to doing what we love to do, you know.
What we love to do, there's nothing like it. And I really, like you said, it's just nothing like it. I turn into another person. We all do. Once we're on the bandstand, we're another animal. We're just...
Right. We're in a whole nother world once we get on the bandstand and behind the instrument. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's even hard to describe to someone else what we feel up there, you know.
It's so hard to describe. But we turn into another person with this artist, and our mind goes, it's just God coming down, and we just release all this gorgeous music, you know?
Right. Well, we're winding down. I still have some more questions for you. You got a minute here.
Okay.
I would like to know what advice can you give to some young and up and coming vocalists, wannabe piano players or organists? Can you kind of talk on that for a bit?
Okay, for vocalists, and I probably could talk about vocalists the best, is finding your voice, and that's the first thing is finding your voice and who you are as a singer, and what's comfortable for you. And what, you know, we all singers have weakness and strengths. Everybody does in their voice. So you find out what those are and what you really can do. And that's the first thing to find. So as a singer, a jazz singer, you may emulate Sarah Vaughn, Billie Holiday, Carmen McRae, but then after you copy them, and it's normal to copy them. I mean, it's normal to whoever your voice, people tend to imitate somebody their own voice sounds most like when they're singing, right? So if somebody feels my voice is most like Carmen McRae, they listen to a lot of Carmen McRae and they sing it. If they feel their voice is more like Billie Holiday, they listen to a lot of that and they copy it. But then they have to turn the record off and figure, where is my voice?
Right.
You know, or Betty Carter. I know a couple singers that came along that you know, emulated Betty Carter, and but then they find their own voice. And there's one singer, and I really, really love her a lot. She's Jasmina Horn. She took Betty Carter and she made her own voice within it. And that's what people have to do as singers, is find your own voice. I mean, you know, for me, it was really, I loved Nancy Wilson. I think she and Sarah Vaughn, those two were really my favorites. And to find myself in them, you know, to find my own path in that voice, because to me, that was the most natural. That's what I felt most geared towards as a singer.
Yeah.
And well, I think that's.
No, I was going to say, I must just compliment you. I think you have a fantastic voice, and
thank you.
And the reason I can say that, and the reason I know that, is we have had the pleasure in the past to work together.
Yes, we have. It was such a pleasure and fantastic to not just meet you, but to play with you for the month. It was fantastic.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I think you are a fantastic vocalist. I'm not ashamed to say that. People that I run into, they say, well, who is the vocalist some vocalists that you use? I say, I use this wonderful vocalist from New York City by the name of Kathryn Farmer. I also use another vocalist by the name of Azure McCall. When you speak of jazz, these are the ladies you want to listen to.
Yes.
They say often imitated, but not duplicated. And like you say, you have to find your own space, your own little niche.
Yeah, yes. You have to find, I call it like finding your own lane. Yeah. Because this is the thing about singers. If you try to copy too much, no two singers are alike. Singers are like snowflakes. Each one is different.
Yeah.
Each tone and each one is different. There's no two singers that sound exactly alike. So you have to find your own voice.
And most of the time, if you work behind someone like, say, Carmen McRae, Sarah Vaughn, they won't even sing the song the same way twice.
No, they sure won't. No.
Stay on your toes. You never know where they're coming from.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
You try to copy somebody, you don't know what you're copying because they might change it up on you too.
Exactly. They definitely. It's particularly jazz, those kind of real hardcore jazz vocalists who also knew instruments, like Sarah played piano, Carmen played piano, and I heard both live. I heard Carmen a couple times. I heard Sarah. I was so fortunate. I heard Sarah endless times at the Blue Note, endless, because I worked there with the late Walter Bishop Jr. And I could go in as much as I want when I wasn't working. I heard Sarah. I was blessed to hear her over and over and over and learned so much. I mean, every time I went in to hear her, I felt like I learned something.
Well, that's how you learn to this very day. When I speak to my little students, or when I go out and do lectures, they'll come up and say, Mr. Manny, teach me how to swing. I said, I can't teach you how to swing, but I would invite you to come out to where I'm playing and listen and watch what I'm doing, and maybe you'll get it. You know, so that's what you have to do, is go out and listen and ask questions, and never be afraid to ask questions. I'm sure you probably say the same thing. You probably still do, you know. But,
it's, it really is, it's a language. So jazz and swing, it is a language. It's like the English language or the French language. And if you know another genre, and even if you're great in that genre, if you try to come over to jazz and you just think, well, I'm great in that genre, but I can come here, hold your horses.
Right. It ain't what you think it is.
It's not, and all of a sudden they can't swing it, because it's different than pop. It's different than R&B. You have to be so loose and be able to swing. That's what it's about. And it's not these other genres. So you have to study it. And it takes years and years and years of study and learning and listening and playing and learning and listening and playing some more. And, just...
Yeah. What do you think about working with producers? How do you feel about that?
Well, when I did my CD, which I was the financial producer of my own CD, not the other ones I did with other people, but my own CD, I appointed the pianist to be the producer of the CD. Why I did that? Because I thought it would be a little much for me just wanting to sing on the record and trying to do too many hats at one time.
Right. It's always better to have another pair of ears.
I really needed that. And plus, I was nervous. I didn't know, even though I had been in the studio before for other people's records, but I never done my own record like that. So I felt I needed somebody because I didn't have a record company doing it for me and giving me a producer.
Right.
And it's a double-edged sword. I mean, for me, I needed it, so I asked my pianist to do it. But sometimes I think that singers or musicians may get a producer that they don't agree with. You know, if you have a producer that you're in the same headspace, it's good. But I think a lot of time producers hear stuff that you might not hear. Like many singers have recorded songs that they didn't like or they quasi-liked, and they did it because the producer said do it, and became a huge success.
Right, right.
So sometimes producers, you really need them. I think as musicians and singers, we need them because sometimes they're hearing something that we don't hear. They hear your voice how you don't hear, but they hear something different. And it's happened that, you know, so I think they're very important to have a producer to work with. I would prefer if I got picked up by a company, which maybe is less likely these days because of the internet, or when I do my next CD, I still will have somebody produce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure I will.
Well, speaking of your next CD, Ms. Farmer,
yes.
Do you have a title for it yet? And can you tell us when you're expecting to record or have it to be released?
Well, I can say, I'm not sure exactly. I want to do it this year, but there's one song I really want to do. Can I tell you the song? I love this song. It Might Be You.
Okay.
I love that song. It was done by Patty Austin and by Phil Perry, the more jazzy, which I will do a more jazzy version. But the original was, I'm trying to think of it was Faster. In Hong Kong, all the bands did the original version. And I love that song. So that's something that I like the title, It Might Be You. Yeah, I like the way it sounds for a CD title. So that's one idea.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to tell all of our listening guests and viewing guests to be on the lookout for Miss Kathryn Farmer's new project, her new CD entitled It Might Be You.
Yes.
So you be on the lookout for that. Can you before we leave you, could you tell our listeners and viewers how you can be contacted?
Oh, okay, sure. You can contact me, email me at jazzdiva@me.com.
One more time.
jazzdiva@me.com. jazzdiva@me.com. That's right.
Fantastic. And on that note, I would like to share with our guests. This is my new.
Oh.
So Manny Kellough and Friends, Speaking of Jazz, East to West Coast, and it's on all the platforms right now. So you can get that up. And while you're out there, be on the lookout for Kathryn Farmer's.
I'm on Spotify too, and Moondance is on Spotify and Apple Music.
Very good, very good. Well, Kathryn, I hate to cut us because I still have more questions, but we getting down to the wire here. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with me and just sit back and be able to laugh and have a good time. And again, I look for that time where we can get on stage and swing hard and do some.
Yes, Manny, thank you so much for reaching out to me like this. It's a pleasure, it really is. It's an honor.
The pleasure is mine. You're a wonderful lady, a fantastic vocalist to me.
Thank you. And so hopefully we'll be back on stage in the near future.
I really hope so. You know what I like to say as I end all of the shows is here's to you and keep swinging.
All right. I like that. Wait, let me get mine. Wait a minute.
All right.
All right. Cheers.
Here's to you. I salute.
I salute. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Manny.
We hope you enjoyed the show and thank you for keeping jazz alive. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels, and all the links are in the podcast description. That's it for now.